No, but I think the difference is pretty striking, no? Between being healthy and losing weight. Like, I can tell what you're trying to sell me when you are selling me weight loss. You're selling me shame. That's what you're selling me.
Ah, it's just so tasty.
Well,
No, 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 it's not. It's not. I'm anti.
no, I know you are, but there's some real things there because I don't know. It's tough to talk about weight loss without talking about shame.
And I think if you talk about, really talk about the real shame that I'll never be enough, or like I was even just this morning, like because we have layers of this stuff of like you're gonna love me no matter what, right? Like unconditional. Like what if your spouse gains some weight while you date them? That's very common for people to get into that marriage weight, things like that. Of like, and then we dig into like, well, you're gonna love me even if I'm not making healthy choices. Are we?
I don't know. That's really a question. It's something I see a lot on the relationship advice subreddits. It's my friend or my spouse is making this hugely unhealthy choice. I saw one, I think, just yesterday. My best friend is 400 pounds. At what point do I sit her down and say, you are literally killing yourself?
Um, I never, in my opinion. The question is, are you okay?
Hmm.
Because when people start making self-destructive choices even unconsciously, and we see them unconsciously, I think as a friend, what would you need? And that would be like, and the best like jaw-dropping questions I've had from friends are like, are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm not. I need someone to listen, and then you can have a conversation. And then ultimately, I know, I think it's up to people. Like, if your friends start making choices where you're like, I cannot support this, I cannot that, um, like, yeah.
That's when your own personal boundaries come in, I think. Because when your friends and family are making choices that you can't support, you aren't obligated to support them.
No, and likewise, they're not obligated to support your stuff. I think that's really hard when we're really enmeshed. It's easier when you're like, oh, I started, one of my skiing buddies all of a sudden is drinking every time we go skiing, and that just doesn't do it for me, right? That's easy. But when it's like, wow, you see behaviors in people close to you, and like, where do I, figure out where you stand on it yourself, and like, what's you and what's them. That can be difficult to not feel like when you want to, especially if they're scary. Like,
Hmm.
with even like I have a family member, like, um, say how do I go about this? Like, when I see things in family members that I love, and I think that is not a good choice, and I cannot support this, like it still triggers of like, mm-hmm. And in some cases walking away,
Hmm.
whether it's a situation for the week, for the month, for the year, forever, is like, it just depends on how much of a relationship you can still continue to maintain. Sorry. um, if you only knew what is holding this phone up.
Painter's tape. I do know what's holding the phone up. It's lots and lots of painter's tape because
Yeah.
Danny is a painter. I love how we've started doing these and not introducing them at all. We just kind of start right in, like, here is the topic for the day.
It's a never ending stream of consciousness talk. It is, but like releasing, like, where are we? um I think with family, that's the thing, or with long-term relationships and divorces, it's like, where's the line, where when we're talking about like releasing things, like, and or even releasing the expectation. I think we hold our family and our spouses and our people close to us to totally different, like, sometimes double standards that we hold our, other people.
Oh, the double standard. Oh, let's talk about this because this is something that we have discussed probably ad infinitum in my own marriage. Like, and we're both incredibly guilty of it. I want to be perfectly clear when I go forward into this that I might sound blamey, but I just have better examples of how my husband does it than how I do it because I'm not I'm not the one with that particular double standard being held against me. For him in particular, it's cleanliness. It's don't leave these things on the floor, as he will leave these things on the floor. Pick up your shoes, he yells at the children, as there's this flotilla of shoes and boots at the end of my bed. And I said, God, like a week ago, this is the only place in the house that I have to lay out my yoga mat, that I don't have to move furniture to accommodate. Can you please put your shoes elsewhere? Well, you put yours right over there. I'm like, yes, but there's a little alcove, right? Okay, so this may be my double standard. But there is a little alcove where my 2 pairs of shoes fit and the rest are all on the rack. It's stupidness, but double standards are highly something that we really have to be careful about navigating in our relationship, because when we hold people to standards that we ourselves are unwilling to maintain, there's resentment.
Well, and I think the stuff that really makes us insane, like cringeworthy, is still that what you see in other people, not necessarily, I would say that's your own stuff. You're, people like, oh, it's what you don't like about yourself. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's things where you're like, ever, like I don't have dirty dishes ever. And when people are like, oh my God, my spouse doesn't pick it up, I'm like, how do you live with that? Like, do I have to learn to live with that? And I can hear like my dad's voice. And these are the really tricks to things that where it's underneath programming is, he's like, you need to learn to share in your house. I'm like, not filth. No. Like,
no, that's not something we need to share. Thank you very much. I'm not about sharing the mess.
Right? Or like, I was like, how would I, when people say compromise, and I start to think about dating, and I'm like, compromise what? Can we just coexist? I don't know. We've got to, because the stuff you don't know is the stuff. Like, I know for sure that the things that are going underneath are the real things.
But on the other hand, you can legitimately be annoyed by the dirty dishes. For me, it's the top of dressers. Like, I can buy him all of the organizers in the world that I want. If he doesn't use them, it's all just sitting outside of the, literally sitting, oh my God. But it's his stuff. So my line is, do I clean up after him? Because that sets a precedent that I am not at all interested in maintaining. Or do I let it slide? And it really, for me, it kind of depends on where it is. When it's in the bedroom, at some point in time, I'll just go through and organize and throw shit away, and he just has to deal with it, because my bedroom is my sanctuary. It's very important to me that that space is pretty and clean and free of clutter and junk, because I cannot sleep if I am looking around at mess.
Yeah, like, I mean, honestly, my entire house is kind of like,
that's a standard for you though, and that's fine.
Bother with because I was like, wow, like, pause for a minute. What, like, if this is gonna be crazy, if this is like out of the way, I'm like, what is that about? And I realized I have better things to do than to clean, so I'd rather just have it organized. I also tend to be a little absent-minded professor, so if I put stuff back in the wrong place, I can't find it. So my keys have a space, because I hate looking for keys. Like, I have better things to do in my life. But yeah, it's interesting to think about, like, does it really matter? Like, I think a lot of the things we think matter so much probably don't really matter, because if the love of my life is a mess, like, I don't know, maybe he is a mess. Oh, I can't see it. But what if it is? Like, what would be if he was like so obsessed with his whatever, his passion, and his like just can't pick up the shoes? I don't know. Like, I think that is something I would be willing to. I don't know. What are standards though? This is the good question. Like, what are your standards, and what are like ticks?
And what will you accept going forward? Because if you pick up the shoes once, I can promise you, you will pick them up for the duration of the relationship, unless you one day put your foot down and go, no, I'm not doing this anymore. And then they just sit there because it's been your...
Well, in speaking of relationships, which just is the quality of life, they're on my mind this week, and I think for a lot of people too, of like, now that we're spending so much time with people, and somebody said something, and I think I told it to you, I don't know if I brought it up on Tuesday, but somebody said about homeschooling. They said, well, that's because parents have figured out little Johnny is actually an asshole, and they don't want to spend that much time with him either. And I went, holy, what? And I thought, because it hit me, I was like, do people not want to spend time with their children? Like, how sad is that? I don't have kids, but I would think that, like, I've never thought of school as like daycare. And there was this big thing on John Oliver, which is where the first time I saw it, was about people really freaking out that their kids have to go back to school because they have lives to lead and they don't want to deal with them. And it was pretty brutal. And I know that there are education reasons and socialization reasons for kids to go back to school, but it probably shouldn't be. We can't stand our own children. Do we have this expectation that other people are raising our children for us? But the same people will say, oh, I'd never get a nanny or a governess or do a private person in home. But you are.
And as a lifelong homeschooler, I can tell you pretty emphatically that we've always been considered very weird for wanting to spend as much time with our children as we do. In fact, there have been times when I would say I homeschool, and the look of scorn that I would get was, I mean, it was pretty palpable. Why? And not in the I'm ruining my children by not sending them to school, because let's talk about socialization at school. Is that a good experience that any one of us actually had? Was school socialization the thing that, I mean, really?
It's a good question now, because I think, like, if I had an innocent little dove, would I want to send her to a place that teaches body shaming, that teaches competition? Like, and I do think you have to really arm your people before they leave you to go there. But they're going to get a lot. I went through a lot of, I just did it today, tapping on high school shit. And I'm like,
see,
it's formative. And the thing is, we want to have good formative, and I think that will be part of the new world we are wanting and talking about, is we want a safe place for our children to grow up and also be realistic in the sense that they are not going to every single person they're going to encounter is going to be supportive or is going to understand them, is going to, that we're trying to build more space for more people to exist. And in some ways we're creating, with a lot of the canceling of everything and the small little boxes, I feel like in some ways we're creating very small boxes people have to live in. At the same time that we're trying to create a bigger place for them to live in. So yeah, I mean, if it were me, I'd probably find my own professionals. I'd like, okay, here's your math teacher, here's your this, now we're doing the exercise, and here's your meditation space, and here you're cooking lunch. I don't know.
The thing about homeschooling for us has always been that when a group or something doesn't work, I can find another. I can pull my children and say, this is not the place for us. Typically that's been because it's too Christian, and homeschooling has long been kind of divided down the Christian versus secular lines, although I suspect the nature of the new world is going to explode our secular options.
Yeah, I mean, I've only known personally, like two employees that we had that were homeschooled, and I was like, refer- my experience with them as adults, right, was that, and it shaped it until I met you. I was like, oh, I don't know anybody. What's the theory behind this, right? And one of which was lacking, had like a refreshing naivete about the world. But both of them, it was beautiful. Like one of them truly had the heart of a 6-year-old as a 20-year-old. And I was like, this is fucking great. And then I thought, does life hurt for you more when you encounter people who are not on your side, who are not, it wasn't about education. It wasn't about the education. It was about the social.
No, it is about the social component. It's about the brutality of the world. And this is a question that I have really, really wrestled with over the years, especially with relationship to my oldest, who is on the spectrum. When at 18 years old, the girl has laugh lines. Like, she permanently has a smile on her face. She's just genuinely kind-hearted. And I was also sure that sending her to public school would destroy her. So the question becomes, do I want her to learn about the harshness of the world? Or would I rather allow her to grow up with some innocence, even if that's to her detriment as an adult? It's a tough question, and it's a question that we all have to ask for ourselves and for our children, and there are no right answers.
Well, and in our conversation that went on this morning is like, we're talking about how much of the outside world are you going to let affect you? And how much of it do you need to be aware of? And I think when you're aware, then you can make the decisions. And when you have the experience, you can also make better informed decisions. If you go out and say the whole world sucks or the whole world is great, that's not true. There's beauty everywhere. There's wonderful people everywhere. There's also like, I used to say there's no bad souls. There probably isn't, but there are some bad people. Like I needed to admit that, and I'm telling you, that hit me about 35. And it's crushing. It's been crushing to see that some people. It's not just that they're in pain. Yes, they may be in pain, but but deep pain makes people do some really dirty shit that they're not sorry for, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and was that good or bad? I don't know. Like I have a pretty optimistic outlook on life, but would that have been, and not because I didn't suffer. I suffered greatly at the hands of people being mean. I wouldn't say bullied, because it was just everybody was a target. It was, you didn't fit in, but I don't know where we were trying to fit in. It's like now we're like, well, where do we fit in this world where it's so big and we're so connected, and we also are like, well, we only have like this little pod, but we also need to be part of a bigger thing,
So the question I think that we have to ask there is, do you think that believing in the goodness of the world has allowed you to be more open to experiences? Because I think that's true. I think that if you approach the world with wonderment, you're more likely to find it.
Oh, well, I do think that for sure, whatever lens you're seeing it in, like, no matter what, I've had good experiences saying, no matter what, I know that the planet is good. The basis for what we live on, nature, is good. It's good for our souls. It's kind. It's a benevolent universe, right?
Which is fascinating, considering the ruthlessness of nature.
It's not personal, though.
But it's not personal.
And that's the difference, is that like even with the coronavirus, it's just doing what it does. So it's not like I'm out hating it as much as I hate some of the policies. And I hate, I don't even mind the policies as much as the discussion around it at this point has gotten out of, it's not creating any solutions for me. So I don't know that I care to have any more discussions about the virus or what we're doing in some ways, other than how to find balance personally. If we find balance personally for what works for us, the homeostasis, I still love the idea of spiritual and emotional homeostasis, and that's very different for very different people. Like, I'm extroverted and I love people, and yesterday I just did errands because I needed to be outside, out of my house. I needed to be in my car. I needed to be going.
That's like the ninth circle of hell for me, just so we're clear on the standards here. Running errands is about the last thing I want to be doing I think, no, I still don't think I'd prefer a dentist, but like they're pretty far down the list for me.
And not always. No, actually, that's true. I can't lie. I love it. I love having little bumpy interactions with people, and I don't call it small talk or shallow. It's just light touches, right? Like, I like to see the challenge. Like, can I connect with another person over something kind of dumb? I think fun, and you can't all the time, and it's gauging, because when I feel socially awkward, for me to like, can we create rapport? Can we connect? And if I can connect with the people who I was at the convenience store, we have nothing in common, this guy, other than this interaction over soda, honestly. Like, and it's like, but when you bring, what you bring is kind of what you get. And I see that because when I'm in a bad fucking mood, like I was at the state of Oregon when I went to go get my mom's vouchers for her, like, and I created a bad, tense situation. I was like, I am 100% responsible for walking in here with a bad fucking attitude. My face said bitch, and I know people that was right, but a real thing about institutions, and they have a huge responsibility to be fair and equitable. Otherwise, they're not serving us. They're just a big weight on society and the people they're supposed to be serving. So.
Oh, law. We should not go there.
We can't go there. So full moon. This has been a weird one. This new moon, the second new moon, because I feel like I kind of did a little bit of retrograde do-over. How about you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this second new moon in Cancer has been very intense. And this first quarter, which started Monday, so, I mean, we're still, this whole cycle has been fascinating. And I think if you've been doing your work and continuing to, call things in, what I have found this cycle is a lot of releasing. It's a lot of letting go.
Yeah, me too. Like, in I would say, like, in the stuff I didn't want to do again. I'm like, didn't we already do this? Like ex lover work, I thought I cleaned this up kind of work, or are we doing this shit again kind of thing? And I find myself like, it's here it is again, love gift from the universe. This is what's in the way. Because here, let me just establish that we are allowed to have everything. We are allowed to do everything, be everything. We are whole and complete right in this fucking moment. I have these programs and these thoughts that say, okay, but this is why it can't come in.
Right.
Yeah. And so this whole cycle for me has been like, yes, absolutely yes. And there's still this. And it's no mistake for me, like, and we're talking about relationships. We've been talking about relationships for me all week, of different kinds of, like, that sense of powerlessness that we sometimes overcompensate for with strategizing and controlling, whether it's our spouses or even the dog yesterday. I was like, stop fucking broom. I'm just trying to clean the fucking, I was like disproportionately annoyed with the puppy attacking the broom. I'm like, dude, it's bad for you. And ultimately, when I got done, I'm like, just don't drink the Bona, okay? Because you could die. And I was like, there we go. I control out of like fear. I think we all do that. It's catching like these same with the institutions. And I was back in high school. Like, and now I have a tapping tick, but I was back in high school where they're like, we don't believe you. You're being thrown out of high school. We're taking your credits. Anxiety isn't a real thing. And I'm like, it is. No one hears me. No one listens to me. So that work, as I expand where I want people to listen to the message that I am trying to share of love and joy. I was like, oh, there's that thing. Here's all these times. Okay, well, I'm not 16-year-old little girl anymore.
So let's talk about working about that, because one of the things that I've seen a lot lately in coaching spaces in particular is conversations about being trauma informed and how you can really coach well if you are not trauma informed, which I'm not sure you can. But the other side of that is, can you help other people with trauma when you have not yet worked through your own shit?
I think you need to case by basis is that here's my experience with it. Like, there's some stuff that I'm like, yep, I can totally walk you through this, because you have to be on the side of anything. It's with anything in coaching, you have to have some results, and you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have the $1 million to help people with money, but you can't be fresh off a job with no sales doing money unless that business, well, I would say not job, business was making money. You know what I like? So with trauma, I think there's a little bit of a heavy-handed thing, because at some point with trauma, you're in therapy land, and you should be referring to therapy. If someone's actively activated, and I'm not saying like if they're just a fucking mess, bless them, like, and know your own limits. And I don't see enough of that thoughtful consideration of like, I can walk anybody through anything. I'm like, there's some things I would say maybe you do need to refer to a therapist, and then you coach each on this, because I'm looking at this with certification, is like, where am I not willing to go? And I've done a fair amount of this on my own really horrible situations, things that I don't talk about, things I don't want to talk about, things that, and I'm like, this is one I don't want to walk someone else through. So we're not going there right now, and maybe later. But you have to know, like, when someone falls apart, can you put them back together?
Well, and another question that I saw just this morning was, which I have to admit, I was fascinated by the answers. It was, how long had you been married before you felt comfortable giving advice to other people about marriage? And I was like, I didn't start talking about marriage until we'd been together for 10 years. We're hitting 20 this year, and I still often am like, nah, I don't want to talk to you about your marriage. No, thank you. But there were answers on there, 2-3 years. Like, how can you even feel qualified to talk about marriage when you're still in the infancy of yours?
Well, I think it's like, where are you talking about? If you are a newly married person, okay, say, I would totally listen to someone who's like, hey, I was older when I got married. And here's the things like I dealt with, of like, I have my own mind, I have my own house, I've always had my own keys, I do my own decorating, like that stuff, like how manage that. Like, okay, here's how we worked around this. That's different than someone who's been married 50 years saying, this is how we do 50 years. Or my parents who got remarried after 22 years and said we never probably should have gotten divorced. Or they're different. And I think where you try to say, like, I think there's too much of the, everybody's got the ideal, oh, this is my soulmate marriage. At 2 or 3 years, maybe not. But
20 years, I'm fairly willing to say that most people don't actually have a soulmate. They have a person that they can tolerate for the rest of their lives.
That's depressing. depressing.
No, well, that, and see, and this is why I'm not qualified to give advice on marriage, clearly, because I mean, I say tolerate, but it's at this point in, I know I've seen the worst of this man, and I know what it looks like, and I'm willing to tolerate those things in order to get to the other beautiful things that are the foundation of my marriage.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. Marriage is definitely not something I am qualified to speak about. Like, other than I know, I have a pretty good feel for what I don't want it to look like. Same with relationships. Like, relationship wise, I could give some advice to a 22-year-old me. I could. Only a 22-year-old me, though, not someone who's, you know, the type who at 19 is like, this is my person, boom, and then they get married and run with it for 30 years. Okay, that's not me. Me, 22-year-old me, was about to have some really big growth spurts. And I am glad that I didn't marry either one of the guys I was engaged to at 29 and 35, or at 19 and 35. Because 19 would have been a mess. I was very idealistic, and I had lots of ideas about how it was going to work. And they
didn't work out. Even if you had, because I was 20 years old when I got married, and I can tell you quite positively, those ideals, they died somewhere along the way.
Well, and they were very much, they were. We did not have the important conversations that a person in their 40s knows that they're hard to say. Like, you talk about money before you get married a lot. You talk about how you're going to spend it, what your goals are, what's really important. And if I was going to say there's anything anymore, like, it's companionship. I certainly don't want someone to support me. There will be no saving. There will be no controlling. I want someone who's in his beautiful masculine energy. Like, we joke about Thor all the time, but I do think, like, why not? But like when they see King energy, I kind of want to throw up a little bit, because I'm like, okay, Thor's the only one that I wanted as a king, because I think royals spoiled, not a good look.
I also think domination in both a political and patriarchal sense, and I'm not interested in any of those things. King is uncomfortable for me, honestly.
Well, but yet we embrace queen. I mean, I don't know if you do. I necessarily embrace that, but it's
sometimes.
Much more. But listen to this. I just learned the other day about titles. I was reading something about titles, and there's never a king. There's a queen consort, but he is called a prince. But a king's wife is called a queen. She is never given the full power to call her man the reigning thing. She's still not fully powerful. I was like, boo, boo. I was actually researching whether or not one could buy a title and then apply citizenship so that one could travel. I will be fully transparent about this, because I had a client who was like, we're buying property at a foreign place and applying for citizenship, so in case we get locked down for 2 years, we can leave. I'm like, that's genius. That also goes with my, I'm going to marry a Canadian very, very soon. Taking applications, gentlemen. Call my way, we'll go your way. 50-50, whatever. But yeah, I think there's a lot of releasing these big paradigms. I think that's what we're given enough time to sit in our stuff right now of like, what's this going to look like?
I think things have changed so dramatically, and it's interesting to me that, I mean, relatively in terms of a plague or pandemic, the loss of life, even here, has not been particularly high. So, which is why you have all of these people who are pandemic conspiracy theorists, because the loss of life hasn't been extreme. On the other hand, I think that it's given us some real opportunities to see what's not working, and that's invaluable.
Yeah, I think people still are continuing to drop into deeper understandings of soul, of knowing, of what their desires are, like what a good life means. And we were talking about earlier this week, like it doesn't matter anymore so much what your shoes look like. Like as much as we're into a lot of consumerism, that is for being out. When you're in, all of a sudden we have this monastic life. But for some people, they're like, I don't want to look at what this means. And I think we are creatures that want to make meaning, right? So we either give it the meaning that there is no meaning. We're completely, robots with syrup, some kind of chemical syrup running around that creates love in our brains, or there's an amazing plan for all of it, and it's all predestined, and you just have to live it out. Like those are the ends of the stuff, and everybody falls in between, right? But when something big happens, we need to make meaning out of it, whether that's personal in terms of trauma, and that's where we get some beliefs. Sorry. Or we want to make meaning out of it. We need meaning. Meaning is important to us. That's very unique to humans. And some of this meaning is not positive, I think.
Is it legitimately not positive, or is it that we're choosing to see the bad?
Oh, well, I mean, I should say not empowering. If you make this all out to be one, I think people are fighting it still, and that's hard because there's a certain amount of surrender. We talk about releasing in this space of like, there's a certain amount of like, I've done the beautiful things. I am in my space, and now I let it go. And there's also some wanting to choose to see the worst. I mean, I think that is still, we're trying to protect ourselves. Like, if we look for the worst, we won't be surprised. Right? Maybe.
And we create those self-fulfilling prophecies that way too, don't we? I mean, not in a law of attraction kind of way, although I know that you believe that you've called in some of those things, but I still think that when we're looking for bad stuff, we find it.
Well, yeah, I think on a practical level, I think on two levels. Like, you can even look at it both ways. Is that on a practical level, the RAS system in your brain, if you start, all of a sudden I've fallen in love with the color like blue, and it's everywhere. I'm like, when did they make blue cars? Oh yeah, 2 years ago. 2 years ago, they made blue 4Runners, and I was like, that's the most beautiful color I've ever seen. Why didn't I see that before? Because I was looking for black cars. Because somehow I was like, I buy a black car or a white car. I'd never buy white, but haven't in a long time. But black or red or whatever, I'm like, those are the acceptable car colors. I'm like, shit. And now there's green everywhere. I'm like, oh my God, there's green everywhere. It's beautiful. It's the same thing. If you start looking for evidence that people are assholes, because this is just
You're
how
gonna find it.
You're gonna find it. If you find evidence of, like, I just saw my neighbors walking with someone with a walker, and I'm like, that's beautiful. And I was just thinking, there's no older people in my apartment complex. They're all 25. Where are all these young people? I'm like, whatever. But I do think we are eminent beings that emanate something. Like if you think of yourself as a little RFID card, you're always vibing something out into the universe. And I will tell you, like I said, I went into with a chip on my shoulder yesterday. I'm like, fucking government, right? And then, but also like, I love the car place. I gotta get a serpentine belt for my car. I'm like, well, I'm gonna wait. This is an opportunity, like they say, to meditate, right? And they were like, hi, how are you? Nicer than they should have been, right? I kind of get great service, and only because I'm like, how are you today? And I fucking mean it, because if I'm gonna have an interaction with a human being, I want it to be good if I can.
Cultivating that makes a huge difference, doesn't it? I really, and I don't think it's about attraction or calling it in. I really just think it's about cultivating it. And there is a huge difference between saying that this is what I am allowed to have, and this is what I am looking to have.
Yeah, I think there's a polarity thing that we don't quite pay attention to, that I think I noticed this.
The wave. We never talk about the wave. We talk about what I can attract. We never talk about the law of balance.
Yeah, I think like our energy is like, I think manifestation tends to be like, what can I pull in? What can I pull in? What can I pull in? I'm like, well, then that makes you needy, right? Because you're thinking, when you think breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, like, you know, how am I paying? And that's why people focus on, how do I pay my bills? How do I treat it when I send money out? Like, I'm like, I fucking hate, because I have things where I'm like, I hate paying for this. And then there's things, you know, like cable. And so I don't pay cable anymore. I'm like, I don't, no, not my thing. Do I lovingly accept my Wi-Fi? Very fat Wi-Fi, yes. You know, like, it's stupid, but it's always the things that you, yeah. But what are you putting out as well? Like, that's part of like breathing in, breathing out. Am I putting out good stuff? Like, I'm putting out, and I think that there's a certain expectation when you create, and I've been here in that place where you're creating, give. I'm depleted, because it's not coming in, but we're not allowing it to come back in the sense that we're giving for the sense of like, when's it coming back? You know, a lot of creators are like, I'm going to give so people will see me and then they will book me, and if they don't, fuck them, and they get mad about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, I'm not good enough, and I'll bring up the stuff, and we'll clear the stuff of like, whatever you're doing, for sure, like what we're creating, because we're going to create and like no one sees it, totally different work, whether it's painting or stuff or memes. And that's why I'm not creating a lot of content for people to consume for free content, because I realized I will let people in on a secret. I was like, I put out a lot of stuff on the like 6 posts a day, people, 6 at one point, a lot of content. And I felt like I did it so that people would see my work and be like, then they're going to want to work with me. And I did it, and I did it, and I did it. And I finally was like, I feel like I'm working for free. This does not make me happy. I'm going to pause. And now when I make stuff, I'm like, ooh, I love that. And I put it up, whether it's a sentence or whatever. It's not as focused as it was. But I feel like there's a sense of manipulation when you're only doing it for like, I create this so people can see it. And that's not intentional. That's manipulation. It's different.
I like to tell people that I make a lot of money from memes, but this is factually correct for me. Like,
your memes are shit.
It's the stuff that I share that keeps me top of mind is more often than not a meme. Because what I do requires explanation, or it requires, you know, you to actually know me. So that's the relationship building portion for me. So content then is quick and easy if it's content, or it's this, or it's a meme.
Yeah, it is stuff that's like real for you. And I think we overthink, I mean, because we're kind of taught that to like be, okay, so the thing of like be more aligned, up level your stuff. Okay.
Oh, Jesus. I'm sorry, I can no longer suppress the involuntary eye roll at the word alignment.
You know, and the thing is like, yeah, because it inherently tells you to go somewhere else. That's my objection. When you say, because I've had it thrown at me like, well, that's not in alignment with me. I'm like, I don't understand your English because it doesn't make sense.
That word, I don't think it means what you think that it means.
Right? Whereas, like, you can have those conversations in a way, I think, that make more sense, and then they really do bring you into who you are. And that's what people are saying, is trying to tell you, like, who are you really? You know, does it feel great? Can you do this thing? I am although an extroverted person, can also burn out on massive outflux of energy. Like, if I give away all my energy, I don't get any back, right? That makes sense to me of like, that's who I am, of like, I can do smaller, deep, versus trying to be like, and I realized with like clearings and readings of like, I can only do so many of those. So I can either burn myself out and try to book myself, 40 clients a week, or there's 2 spots a day, 4 days a week. That's it. So, but saying, oh, I have to align to holding a bigger container doesn't make as much. It doesn't make sense to your real brain. Your real brain is
God,
like,
you're using 2 of them in one sentence, align and container.
yeah, I do. I do like the container thing in that if you think of like, I don't know what this thing is called. It's a space. It is a space. It's an energy thing, but I don't think most people, when they're using that, are thinking of it in terms of what their real life is. And I think that makes it hard to be like, it's still like, I'm not enough. I can't hold a container. I can't do this thing.
So there's my problem with it, because you've said it. What is a container? A container is something that holds things, right? So you have to pour in to the container. Like, it's not just about the space. It's about the energetic work that goes into creating and maintaining the space. And that's the part of that I think is really lost when we're talking about sacred containers.
Yeah, like I would say that my new moon intentions are a container. They're a vessel. Vessel is a beautiful.
I like vessel a whole lot better because it feels like what we're trying to describe.
Well, and it has a certain sense of definition, whereas like we do these very stream of consciousness, and they are a container in that we're going to go about an hour, and whatever we're going to put in there is what's going to move around, and it's going to be right. I love that, but I also think of like it has to have a shape to it so that it's not just, because that's when energy gets weird, or soul sucking is like, if we just did this and we're going to talk until we're tired. That's actually kind of what we do. Is like we talk until it has to.
Now, I feel like we have to qualify that, the fact that we've been talking all fucking morning long in back and forth voice messages. And so this is almost an extension of the conversation that we've been having all day. And very likely when I hit the stop button, we'll talk more. But
as far as like, I mean, and that is the one thing that I think is very real about having clients. Like when I look at like, do I want to do a longer monthly program with people? Mm-hmm. Like, what is that going to take, and that what am I going to put into it really? Because right now I'm just doing single sessions. I have space in my head for the right kind of person for this longer monthly thing, but I also know that what is that going to take for me to put in, because I'm not going to detach. Truly, I'm not going to ever drop them. Do you hear the ice cream truck?
I do. I hear the ice cream truck.
Yeah.
And the question there is, I feel, especially right now, do your clients have the bandwidth to pour into those longer containers? As a funnel designer, I am inclined to say the answer is no. Not now.
I think people are sucking up the last bits of summer. It's brutally hot here in Oregon. And so people are like, heat's exhausting. Like, we just want one last big cuddle with our outdoor stuff before whatever this thing is called school year for most people. So I'm finding that, I was fighting reactive. Like, I'm like, maybe I should have something other than because readings are somewhat reactive, let's be honest. As you come to me, I'm like, I feel your energy, I feel your blocks, here's your past life stuff. This is what we can do with this, right? Here's what, and here's what you need to know. That's generally people like, what am I not seeing? What am I not seeing? And I was trying to, for the longest time, make that bigger than reaction. I'm like, I'm not enough if I'm not building the things, I'm like, ultimately, everybody's responsible for their own energy. And that's where I was like, I can give you the mirror. And if you want to do this on a bigger thing, we can do this. But like Boxer is the answer, or Messenger. Because that's kind of what we do is like, I had this thing, it set me off. And like, what do you think? I need some perspective. I'm dying. I'm laughing. Like, it's not all bad stuff. sometimes people send me shit. They're like, you don't know what just happened to me. Oh my God, I blew something up. It's so funny. And I'm like, hold up. You can create explosions. You can create money.
But we're not, especially as we go forward. I think it's really, I mean, it's going to be August in 2 days. And then we have to talk about school. And then we have to talk about the weather changing. And then we have to talk about flu season, which last year was just the flu. I think people are underestimating the potential impact of cold and flu season on corona transmission.
Well, my thought is here. There's some stuff we'll see. Like it's a we'll see, because here we get cold. You know, we have no snow right now, but we're gonna get snow probably in 10 weeks. Like we'll start getting mountain snow in 10 weeks. You know, if they're going to close down the restaurants, we have a 10 o'clock curfew now. So the main transmission inside during the winter months is social gatherings, parties, school, and bars, and gyms. And we'll be having none of that shit. Sorry, my battery is low. We're down to 10%. You know, so the chances are, and you know, if we're not going to be getting together, we won't be doing what we're doing right now, which is going to the park. And but I do think that, yeah, it's a big concern. People are concerned. And so I think the things that are selling is what's supporting the inner work, client generation, because we realize for a lot of people, we will not be using our regular marketing. What are we doing? I sent you a really cool link with my future ex-boyfriend. He's so cute. I love his face. Why do I love the teddy bears? I love them. They're so cute. So he's probably got a bunch. I don't know. But his face is so happy. And that tells me that is the thing. You buy the vibe, because like everybody teaches that stuff. Oh, he's so happy. Yeah, what are people going to be doing? Because I think the real freak out will be in the next couple of months, where people are like, this is not going away. How are we going to start doing this in a way, you know, for entrepreneurs? I've seen a lot of low-end stuff that's pretty smart, good stuff, really smart low-end offers, like, you know, sub 500 kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. That's quick, easy, very solution-oriented, and that's still selling a lot. Or the big, like, I want the deep work right now, have the space, and I'm filling the call. Like, nothing in between, though.
No, there doesn't seem to. I have not been seeing a whole lot of success with the $1,000 to $2,000 range, which is honestly a staple for a lot of people.
Yeah, I know as far as like, I'm gonna have to plug in. Take my tape off. Rip the Band-Aid off. Hopefully makes you feel like I'm getting that fast. But that anti-gravity chair is as far as what I'm looking for right now, I'm looking at very simple solutions to very specific things. Like, I just looked at an ads campaign thing. I'm interested in that because I'm feeling a little bit like burnout on people telling me they're experts at everything and charging $3,000 a month or $2,000 to run my ads. And I'm like, but I don't have the ad nailed, right? Like, sorry, realistically, I'm going to try it myself, see how it works, and then I'll hire someone to do it. Like, I don't know.
No, we still don't spend enough time in business talking about a minimum viable product. If you can't sell the minimum viable product of whatever your thing is, then you should not be spending a lot of money outsourcing it. This is typically when I'm telling people who try to hire me that they're not actually ready for me, because they have not created a minimum viable product that they've been able to sell successfully more than 5 times. Like, I can build you a funnel, but I can't validate it for you if you have not already done that work yourself.
Well, and I think this is one of the things that I still think that I've gone back to basics, because I always remember I had this great, my dad's friend was a music producer in LA, and his wife was worked in theater in LA. I don't know exactly what she did, but she worked in film as well. But she would say, you just go back to the boards. And that's what I think, is that if you feel like you're hitting and missing on everything, like it's slappy, it's just to go back to single sessions, because your single sessions validate. They're affordable generally, unless you're selling $500 sessions, in which case you probably have some letters behind your name. And
for a lot of experience, because my single sessions sell for $500 when they're half off.
But you have validation on those. You
right.
have lots of sales on them. And that's what I was going to say. Or the thing is, you've actually got sales on them. And sometimes they're just what people need, is they need the one-time solution and off they want to go.
Yep. Before
people get caught up in this how to scale, well, if you don't have enough sessions booked, then you can't scale, because you don't have the offer. When you scale, there's a natural order, and people are trying to get you into this, like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be like, I feel like there's a lot of pushing for, I've got to hit the 50, I've got to hit the 70, I've got to hit the 80, I've got to hit the 100,000. Great. But when you're selling that to someone who's doing sub 10, like really, or if you're not selling all your spaces out, when you move to scaling is once your practice is full. Or you have a product that has sold, if you sell products like things, like things, or courses or whatever. But even with courses, if you haven't validated the course, how do you know it's going to sell?
Right. Digital products are really dangerous to try and sell if you have not already validated it. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the live launch for a lot of reasons. I mean, I like live launches and they work well to sell certain things, especially like group programs. But if you have never sold the thing before and you're creating it on the fly, it's much easier to say this is going to work or this is not going to work versus the 12 months that you spent creating this product to launch it to get nothing.
Well, and the components, like I think that you have to be a savvy consumer with these things, because ultimately some of these people who are really further along in the journey, shall we say, have built a really decent audience, and that took them some time. Some of them were fast. It's okay. You can build a fast audience. You just need to have a good strategy that works for that, which is solid content and a strategy to apply it. Like, it's not just going to happen because you want it to. Like,
no, you either have to borrow other people's audiences, or you have to be willing to do the legwork of adding the 50 to 100 friends a day that's going to build your audience. There are no shortcuts here.
Yeah, and wherever you're selling it, that's what I've seen. Because I feel like I have tried everything at this point. Like, because I've done Facebook ads. I did Facebook ads for my book when it came out. It was very successful. It worked really well. What I didn't have a clear picture of was that I was really going to be selling to my email list. And then so I continued to develop an email list that wasn't related to what I was doing on Facebook. So I was like, can't really. And now I have a small list by any standards that doesn't relate to what I do now, which was unfortunate. Like, if they were a small percentage of that list, that would be great. But I spent a fair amount of cash figuring out how to get people to read my book so that they would, book me as a coach. And it just was not cohesive.
Well, and we can another day do the whole conversation about how books are no longer a good lead magnet.
So sad. Books are going back to being books. So if you're going to write a book, write a really good book.
Don't write a lead magnet. I don't want your book.
And I've sold those, and I'm telling you that there's a reason I've stepped away from them, is because bad books. Well, they
do work, but they're bad books.
Yeah, you have to write a good book. And there's too many people saying it doesn't matter what you write. You don't have to fix the typos. Somebody the other day was saying you don't have to, we'll fix it. It's like, we'll fix it in post. It was literally, we'll fix it in post. We'll launch the ebook. And then when we find all the shit and garbage that's in there, we'll fix it later. I'm like,
that's not how this works.
So the thing is like, yes, if you, and it's okay on that side, there are people who do not care about grammar. There are people who do not, but you will never have a New York Times bestseller with crap grammar. Get over it. Like, and they're like, well, that wasn't my point. Well, that, of course, that's not your point. Your point is to book clients, but why would you go to the effort of a book when you could write killer posts and repurpose and stuff like that? Write a book because you want to write a book. It'll be good, in my opinion. Right. In my opinion.
And that's what you've released.
Well, I fully did. I finally said to someone the other day that I have, like,
you're not a book coach anymore.
I'm not.
I know that's a hard thing for you to accept in the identity of it, but I think letting go of it has been really good for you.
Yes. Well, because ultimately I had to be like, I'm not a publisher anymore. And I'm like, what does that mean? And it took me several months to be like, that was my identity. That was my source of this. That was my family legacy. There was some, like, my dad, but I'm still the owner of Valley Pub. I still own newspapers. I still own that company. I still own, and what does that mean to me? So if there's a part of me that's like, but I wanted to let go of I had a realization that I put all my eggs in the I'm smart basket. I know that basket. Mm-hmm, right. Whereas my biggest gift in life is my energy and imagination, right? It really is. Like, I'm super smart. Great. That's awesome. Yeah, I can smart it. I can do the smart analytical admin things. I'm good at those. Where I'm magical, this is like your zone of good to your zone of excellent, where I'm fucking magical is in my readings, in my intuitive work, in my energy work. I can pull stuff and see stuff in people that they cannot see, and I am totally stepping into that. It's scary in some places for me, and I just work through it every day, and it gets better every day. That's
for me. It's been guilt, because I'm still letting go of the guilt. Oh, lots of guilt. And that's familial programming. I still hear my father's voice when I am reading a book in the middle of the day. You should be doing something better and more constructive with your time. But in fact, I also heard that I would never get paid to write, and that I would never get paid to do, the things that I do, in fact, now get paid for. And I've really had to lean into this concept lately that I am lazy. And I use that word because that's the word that I still hear is lazy. And I'm trying to reclaim the sense of ease that actually exists there. That when I allow myself to just do the things that are important to me, when I allow myself to spend time with my family and read my books and cultivate my knowledge, that in fact, those are the things that build my business. They build my skill level. They're the things that people come and see me for. But it's still a hard thing for me to get over.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful to like acknowledge that the stuff we did naturally, instinctively, the things that I do, because I'll have moments where I'm like, I spend a lot of time talking to the ether, to the space, right? Mm-hmm. Like I spend a lot of time in there. I'm like, I could get more grounded, but I'm like, this is the stuff that feeds the big realizations, the big, like this is, it is easy in the sense that it is work, my work. Like I still just like work's supposed to be hard. Work's supposed to be dirty. Work. If you really work, you must be sweating. Right. And it was a lot of the guilt of that things came easily. Things came easily to me. It was natural for me. It was part of, it's just who I am. And accepting that and embracing that your best gifts are the ones that are like, this is cake. And it has different, yeah, I'll just say it's cake because I was like, oh no, let's justify how it's
no, let's not. It's easy. The things that are easy for me are still the things that I occasionally feel guilty about doing. I feel guilty about reading really long Facebook posts and analyzing the nature in which those relationships exist. But the other part is that analysis is exactly what I do. I look at the parts of things. I have to see the whole forest to be able to tell you about the trees. And I've really had to stop beating myself up for going and peering around the forest.
Yeah, because ultimately it is those things that support us. They inform us. They've created who we are. They are who we are. And then it's about figuring out, well, one of the things I realized recently was like, God, I just talk so much. I am talking all fucking day. Mm-hmm. I'm talking to you. I'm talking to my brother. I'm on threads with my friends. And I was like, oh, I talk to people. Like, this was huge. It sounds dumb, but like, I mean, it sounds like obvious. Like, I don't mean to beat myself up, or I was like, talking to people is how I serve. This is how I do things for people. I have always, whether I was a publisher, whether I was a writer, when I was in the store and I did sales, when I did retail, my job was not, I did merchandise. I'm a fucking good merchandiser. But my job was when people would come in, you know what sales looks like for people who, like, if you want to do luxury sales, I will tell you people right now, anybody who's never thinks retail is not fun, let me explain luxury sales in a tack shop. Just a very expensive pet store. So $1,000 helmets, $300 pants, $200 shirts, blah, 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 right? And not everybody, like, our thing was everybody, every budget, right? So not everybody, we had levels of stuff. But when they come in, you do not do the sales of like, what do you need today? How's it going? How's your ride? Is there anything you need? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. I'm going to go over here. Do you want a mimosa? I almost always close in those situations. Now, my brother had a different tactic. He's a little more, he'll sell you the G-Wagon, man, I'll tell you what. But he, like, for me, I was like, cool. Do you want those? Because I knew that if they didn't want those, truly, like, I don't want to sell them shit they don't want. This is my store. This is our store. And it was always, I believed in what I sold. 100%. We never carried anything that we were going to put our name on that wasn't something that we loved. Now, did it fit one brand, fit my body better than the other? Mm-hmm. Did one coat fit me better? Yeah. And that's who I took care of. I took care of ladies coming back to ride and little kids that drive people crazy. I could sit with them all day. Yeah. No, we should try on every pair. Mm-hmm. And their parent, they bring back, Mama, this is what I got. I got a pile. Because I loved working with them. And it just cannot be like, I've just really dug into the last couple of months. What do I love? Who do I love working with? Your avatar is people that it's easy to fucking talk to. Easy. Mm-hmm. They don't look at you like, and they don't judge you. They just love talking to you. It's easy.
And I think that's where we leave it. At ease.
At ease.
We're letting go of everything that's not easy.
Yeah, we are. We are. Everything that's not easy. Soulmate love's got to be easy, right?
I don't think it's available if it's not easy. I mean, it's there. You can certainly dig and scrape and claw for it, but it comes much easier when it's easy. Yeah. All right, y'all. We will talk to y'all soon. Bye.
Bye.